We're recording this early. Davante Adams is a New York Jet. Let's talk about it. All right, Amir, let's get into it here. Of course, we are recording this 2 days early on Tuesday because this trade just went down and we have to talk about it. Davante Adams, if you missed it, is now a New York Jet. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams are now teammates in New York, and this offense looks better than ever in the Aaron Rodgers era. Davante Adams goes to the Jets for a conditional third-round pick, meaning there's some kind of clause in this trade where if he doesn't play a certain amount of games or if they don't win a certain amount of games, whatever it is, that third round could turn into a second-round pick for, of course, the Las Vegas Raiders. But again, he's teaming back up with Aaron Rodgers. You add Garrett Wilson into the mix. Amir, I think this is the best wide receiver duo in the league now. I don't think there's any questions about it. You add on Allen Lazard, who's playing his best career football. Breece Hall is now getting going, right? At least is what we saw last year. He just had his best game, and that he should continue to build on that with the new coaching staff. Of course, Tyler Conklin's solid. The offensive line is shaky. Regardless, though, this offense now has more talent than ever in the Aaron Rodgers era. You can argue that this is the most talented offense that Rodgers has ever had. Now, you'd have to argue with the early Packer days, but Amir, your early thoughts on this trade. How does this transform this Jets team?
This is honestly an amazing trade. The fact that, you basically give them a bag of chips for Devontae Adams, who's still, elite. I think that's really huge for this Jets team. But honestly, the biggest problem for me, is really that culture, for Rodgers. Rodgers, in my opinion, especially seeing the interview this morning, but him basically throwing Mike Will under the bus, like stuff like that can't happen.
He's probably going to get cut.
Yeah, right. And I think it's definitely going to be some division in that locker room. The fact that Rodgers sort of had his hand in it and getting the head coach, the head coach fired, a defensive minded coach. I think that's really what's going to separate this team. But the one thing that's really hard to stop a team from winning is talent. And so I think adding Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson. I'm sorry, but your wide receiver one duties are basically stripped from you, out of nowhere, just
right,
like that.
Temporarily.
Right. But I think, we honestly should see this team start to piece stuff together. Because last night they honestly looked great offensively. It's crazy. The one night they looked good offensively. Defensively, they took a step back. But I think from now on, we should, see a nice little run from this team.
Yeah, no, so I wanted to really look into this duo. We knew it was a great duo. It was the best quarterback receiver duo in the league for like a 6-year stretch. But I really wanted to dive into their last 4 years together, their peak as a duo, as some would say. From 2018 to 2011, or to 2021, excuse me, Davante Adams was averaging a mere 120 receptions a year, 1,400 yards, and 14 touchdowns a year. That is historical numbers for any other wide receiver across the league, and he's doing that on a yearly basis it was a 4 to 5 year stretch. This duo is amazing, and I want to throw that out there. Usually when teams go after it and get a big name, there is an adjustment period. But there is going to be no adjustment period here, right? You have Davante, who was with this quarterback for 6 to 7 years. There's no adjustment period. They know what they like. They know exactly what they do against certain defenses, right? Where is Davante Adams supposed to be with Aaron Rodgers in certain plays? Outside of learning the playbook, which will only take a day or two for Davante Adams, Amir, I don't think this offense really misses a beat. Like you mentioned, they just played their best game as an offense last week, and the defense took a step back. But I think Ulbrich, of course, he was calling the defensive plays, but also managing like the game, the time throughout the game, and when to call his timeouts and all of that good stuff. He's only going to get more comfortable as a coach. But Amir, just your thoughts on the comfortable. I guess if they can get this, I'll say this: if they can get this offense going, and if it's going to be as good on paper as we think they can be, I mean, what do you think the ceiling is? Do you think this team can actually win this division and get on the right track?
Yeah, honestly, I think they honestly really could. The only team that's really in the way of stopping them is Buffalo.
And last night's loss was huge.
Yeah, right. But like me, like my biggest concern for Buffalo is depth. And I think eventually, their lack of talent is going to catch up to them. It's only so much Josh Allen can really do, and that defense can hold up. But it's crazy. Devontae Adams is not only pairing up with Rodgers, but Lazard and also Hackett. So you're basically bringing together the whole entire Packers offense back together. And I think it's really this duo could really be the second best duo behind Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings.
Okay, well, Well, I'll say this, Amir, is this the best like receiver slash tight end duo since Kelsey and Tyreek Hill? Is this the best duo since? I mean, I could be missing
Yeah.
somebody along the way, but I think it definitely has the argument.
Now, honestly, I think it definitely is. I mean, the only notable duo you could really name,
Is
um,
Jordan Love and Christian Watson?
no, honestly, like seriously, I mean, the only duo I said that's like in that conversation, outside of these two, and Kelsey and Mahomes is probably Cooper Cup and Stafford. But I was really only for like 1 year. These guys
Right.
did it for consistently for years.
Yeah. Well, regardless, Devontae Adams is a Jet. Let's get on over here too. Now, if you made it to this point of the show, look, this is the spot to be if you want to bet on your weekly games. Because last week, Amir and I were 13-1 on our week 6 game predictions. The only one we missed, we bet on the Broncos. They came up a little bit short there against the Chargers, but 13-1 on the week, insane. On the year, of course, I'm at 68%. Amir's only 4 games back from me at 63%. But this week, we have a lot of games that we're picking differently. So the gap could look a lot different here in a week's time. But let's get into it here. Of course, you see the game slate here. Amir, before the show, did change his pick from Denver to New Orleans, or excuse me, from New Orleans to Denver. I swapped those there. But we disagree on the New England and Jacksonville game the Green Bay and Houston game. We'll talk about that. That's a big matchup.
Yeah,
But
great
for the
game.
New England and Jacksonville game, I think Drake May, look, I think he transformed this offense. I'm a big Drake May believer. He was my quarterback 2 in this draft class. And I think he, is really going to open up this offense going forward. And again, a lot of these young wide receivers like Demario Douglas and Jalen Polk and of course Boutte, right? Keyshawn Boutte, a lot of these young weapons in this offense look great with Drake May at the quarterback position. So I think, hey, I think Drake May is going to go into London, even though that it is a bit of a travel adjustment. I think he's going to get his first career win. But Amir, any thoughts on that Jacksonville matchup here?
This is honestly an interesting matchup. I'm leaning towards Jacksonville here just because, I think that, that nice little adjustment period of being in London for a week and a half is going to be huge for them. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has honestly looked, pretty good these past 2 weeks. The offense does honestly look pretty solid these past 2 weeks. The biggest concern that I have, is that defense. I mean, last game, Drake May looked absolutely great, against that tough Houston defense for his first game. He obviously started, a little shaky, and he turned the ball over twice, 2 crucial turnovers. But I mean, he honestly looked good. And, he honestly made that passing attack look serviceable.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, weeks 1 through 5, before Drake May was even starting, I mean, really, I mean, that offense is really built, off that run game. But I think Drake May honestly could open that offense up even more. But I'm leaning towards Jacksonville. I think, just that experience, being on the road, being in a foreign country is huge for them.
I want to ask you something here about this matchup. Might seem it might not even matter at the end of the day, but I think it will. Which has a bigger impact? The Patriots getting Ramondre Stevenson back on the field, or ETN missing this game? Do you think it's the ETN, I guess, injury, or do you think it's the Ramondre addition for either offense? Which
I
has
think
the
it's
bigger
definitely
impact?
ETN. Honestly, in my opinion, I think it's definitely ETN. I mean, because they really kind of already came out and say, Ramon's going to get a less workload because his huge fumbling problem. And so I
Yes.
think losing ETN, I mean, his offense is already struggling enough. You already have receivers who kind of struggle, beating man-to-man coverage consistently. With the Patriots love to play physical man-to-man coverage, and so I think sort of losing your starting running back, a guy that can really open up the offense is really going to hurt them.
Absolutely. We're taking Atlanta at home against Seattle, Buffalo at home against Tennessee, of course, to get their ball moving in the right direction yet again. Indy, of course, against Miami. The Bengals, even though the Browns have Joe Burrow's number, the Browns are horrendous at this point. We're Browns fans, and I mean, we might be the worst team in the league. Since he gets a win there, now there is a big matchup this week, Amir. Detroit and Minnesota. Detroit on the road going to Minnesota. Two teams that I'm going to spoil it for you guys. They are top 3, top 5 teams in our power rankings, like they should be for everybody's power rankings list. They are two very talented teams. It's going to be a matchup of Ben Johnson offensively versus Brian Flores defensively. Who can out chess the other, I guess, coordinator? I think it's going to be a great game top to bottom, but we both go with Detroit there. Amir, Minnesota's higher in your power rankings. Spoiler alert. But why do you not have Minnesota grabbing the win here at home?
Well, normally I don't like to pick teams that have back-to-back road games. So for Detroit, they're going to Dallas and then going to Minnesota. Two tough, places to play at. But my biggest concern is Sam Darnold. Darnold's been great up to this point, but I mean, the past 2 weeks, I mean, you've seen some really bad,
Yes.
times with Sam Darnold. I mean, times that make you, thinking back about him, with New York. I mean, you got to think about, 2 games ago, against Green Bay. That second half, he played, horrendous. Against the Jets, he played horrendous too. And so I think that this Detroit team, the way they played defensively last game, they can sort of build off of that. And I mean, I've been saying it, the whole entire season. I think defensively they're only going to get better. Now what's really going to hurt them is them losing Hutch. I mean, that's huge. I mean, because this team sort of lives off of stopping a run and blitzing and playing aggressive. But I just think at this point, Detroit's finally hitting their groove, hitting their rhythm offensively. Especially I mean, this is in my opinion the best offense Minnesota has played. So I think Florida's going to have a really tough time really scheming against that run game and pass game. So I'm taking Detroit on the road.
Another potential game of the week here could be the Green Bay Packers and the Houston Texans. Look, for me, it really came down to weather, right? I mean, it's going to be a little bit chilly in Green Bay this weekend, and I am worried outside of Derek Stingley about the remaining or the rest of that defensive secondary there in Houston. But also, I mean, if I think the only flaw that we can say outside of their secondary is the fact that if they don't have a consistent running attack, this offense is very stagnant, right? But I think, again, Joe Mixon should be back for this game. That'll definitely help them. I'm just going to trust, hey, two high powered offenses. I'm going to trust the quarterback I like a little bit more in Jordan Love. Might be a hot take, but I'm going to take Jordan Love here at home. Amir, any quick thoughts about potentially game of the week there?
I'm gonna be honest. I thought about this game for days, but who I was going to pick, man, this is going to be a high scoring game.
You know I
And
was going with Jordan Love, so
yeah, yeah, but like I mean, like, dude, like Houston's gonna really have to depend on mixing this game to really, get this offense rolling. Which honestly they really shouldn't. But not having Nico Collins is huge, and
that's the
so
big factor.
yeah, a huge factor for me. So I'm gonna be honest, I might end up changing it the next couple of days. I'm gonna have to really think about it. But I'm rolling with Houston here. I think for Green Bay, J Love last year looked amazing. He looked great. But I'm taking Houston here. I think Stroud's gonna get it done. It's gonna be really close. A shootout. I might end up switching. I don't know. I'm taking Houston.
Of course, any changes, we'll let you guys know in the comments section. Now, here is the late game window, the 4 o'clock, of course, all the way to Monday nights. We agree on every single game. Of course, we have Philly on the road, even though Nick Sirianni might not even be there for that game. The Rams getting Cooper Kupp back. That's a huge addition. But unfortunate news, Puka, it looks like he's going to be out at least another month. So Puka, again, a speedy recovery to you. But Washington should pick up a win there against Carolina. Now, big upset here. Amir, I haven't picked against Kansas City in a singular game, including the playoffs, dating back to week 13 of last season. I did some research. Now, week 13 of last year, of course, I made a preseason prediction before last season. I said, hey, Jordan Love's going to go in Arrowhead and he's going to throw for 300, a couple touchdowns, and pick up a big time win. And he did exactly that. I mean, if I bet on that before the season, if I was of age at the time, Amir, I would be in a penthouse at the moment. But we both have San Fran there picking up a win at home. I think we both can recognize that San Fran needs to win a little bit more at this point in time. And of course, due to the Super Bowl, how that ended up last year, and these two teams' history in recent years, San Fran's going to come in with a chip on the shoulder and pick up a big time win. Now, the Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I made this prediction before the Davante Adams news. And as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to stick with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that their defense is going to get after the Jets. There might be an adjustment week, even though on paper there shouldn't be. But again, at home, I like the Steelers defense. This is something that I might change, but I like the defensive line of the Steelers against the New York Jets offensive line. Of course, we both take Baltimore and the Chargers at home, or on the road, excuse me, on Monday night. Any thoughts on these matchups, Amir?
That Pittsburgh and Jets game, you know, this in my opinion is going to be, a straight slugfest. And
Yes.
I was thinking about this game for days too, but that Pittsburgh offense is just so stagnant for me.
Yes.
And I mean, this Jets team that love to just run man to man. They honestly don't blitz too much, but they love running, a lot of quarters, man based coverages. So I mean, I don't see Fields really moving the ball much, unless he runs the ball 10 plus times and uses his legs. But I just feel the Jets team really neutralizing that offense completely.
Yeah, I mean, again, can't really argue on that. I just trust Mike Tomlin at the end of the day, I guess was my original argument. But let's get into our week 7 power rankings. Of course, this is a weekly series. We go through our top 10 teams, and I hate to break it to you, we're not going to go one by one this week. Why? Well, Amir, there wasn't really any changes. There was one change in mine and one change in yours. I have the same exact top 10. The only thing I changed look, man, I'm starting to buy into this Baltimore team more and more every single
Yeah.
week. I have them moving up one spot and Minnesota down one spot just because of the bye week. But I don't know. I think if these two teams matched up, I think I would take Baltimore in that matchup. Now I will say this: I have 3 top 10 matchups this week. You have 3 top 10 matchups. So loaded week of football. But that is my top 10. Amir, the only difference with yours, of course, you have Green Bay entering the list and Tampa Bay dropping out of the list. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did you have Minnesota at 2 last week?
Yep, that too.
Okay. Well, then, yes. So the only difference is Tampa Bay leaving and Green Bay entering. Uh, Quick thoughts on that from you. Why did Tampa Bay leave the list despite putting up 51 and getting a an all-time performance from Sean Tucker?
Well, in my opinion, this Tampa Bay defense is terrible. And um, this Tampa Bay team, I mean, outside of the huge win against Detroit, which is a major win, I more so believe, that game was Detroit sort of, underperforming. I mean, this Tampa Bay offense too. I mean, Baker threw 3 picks in the first half,
Yeah.
and
I like that
they
back of the
basically
game.
just like right, and that second half. I mean, they basically just blitzed Spencer Rattler and just like and just pray, he didn't dot them up. I think from now on throughout the year. That team was really, really going to struggle. For Green Bay, on the other hand, Green Bay, I mean, Jordan Love looks amazing. He's back healthy. He's back flowing. Jaden Reed's probably the most underrated receiver in the league.
I
You know,
agree.
he's absolutely amazing too. And so I think this Green Bay team also hit his stride.
That is our power rankings. Of course, now we're going to move into the spect for Becht or the race for Travis, whichever prospect you want to talk about. Here is the top 5. Of course, if the season ended today, this would be our draft order. New England stays at 1, the Browns stay at 2. That's just not a sight I thought I would see before the year. Jacksonville stays at 3, the Rams stay at 5 despite their bye week, and Carolina, with their loss, jumps back into the top 4. Amir, any thoughts on outside of the Browns? Of course, we know the Browns have been a disappointment. Who do you think out of these 5 teams has the best chance to get the number 1 overall pick? Again, Drake May took over New England. Does his play, I guess, screw them in a way out of the number 1 pick?
I say definitely Carolina. Carolina, honestly, it's a terrible matchup for them for every team in the division. And so, I think for Jacksonville, I mean, you're at least seeing, some progression with Jacksonville and New England, and Cleveland. But like Carolina still is just consistently just bad. The offense looks slightly better, with Dalton in. And Dave Canal is basically, boosting up his veteran quarterback, but still, I mean, this team is losing so much. And I think at this point they're focused on, getting a fresh start at quarterback, giving Dave Canales a completely, brand new surface to work with.
Yeah. Now, I will say this, Amir, as Browns fans, we got to get more and more comfortable with the idea that Shador Sanders might be the quarterback at the
Yeah.
start of next season. Because, I mean, I can't see Watson being here, even if he has a resurgence to end the year. The week 6 player of the week. First time in his young career. Of course, this was the guy that, again, we just had the race for Travis. It was the chase for Caleb last year, and that was I gave it away, but that was really it was one of the most talented prospects we've ever seen, arguably the most talented quarterback prospect in draft history. But last week he was 23 of 29, 226 yards, 4 touchdowns in London. Is this the breakout game for him? That is a question I'm going to go to you. But of course, Caleb Williams, week 6 player of the week. Amir, is that the breakout game from Caleb? 10, 15 years down the line. Let's say he's an okay quarterback, an above average quarterback. Maybe he's on the Hall of Fame trajectory. Is this the game we look back on and say, yeah, that's the game we knew for sure he was going to be special?
I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was last week.
Yeah.
Despite it being against Carolina, I thought that game alone last week boosted up his confidence, sort of, not routed him, but got him like, hey, I can really do this. I think that sort of, swayed the locker room, swayed this team in his favor, and so I think, especially this past game too. I mean, that really just added to it. The game kind of started off slow, but it got to a point where it's like Caleb looked like he was like, absolutely crazy. And so I think that, this offense too honestly looked better.
The
I'm still
field
worried
looked a
about,
lot better.
yeah, I say too, the play calling was way better this week too. In past weeks, the play calling was piss poor and terrible. I mean, they having, split backfield sets, bad play calling, but it seems like, they're really trusting Caleb a lot more, which I love to see.
The more and more I see this young rookie class really grow and dominate the league early on at the quarterback position. I mean, Drake May, we have to see a little bit more, but Jaden Daniels has been amazing. Caleb has been amazing. Of course, a lot of the other offensive linemen around the league have been really, really good. And then you add on a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., who is really the number one guy there in Jacksonville. This rookie class is so talented. Troy Franklin
Yeah.
just had his first touchdown last week. That it kind of, I think, when I look at next year's class, it's a lot worse. And again, a lot can happen from now until April. But as of right now, I think this draft class that we have might be a very, very special one when we talk
Yeah.
about this class years down the line. But what I want to do, Amir, and this was the main topic of today's show. The bless you, of course. The trade deadline is coming up here in a couple weeks. So what we wanted to do, we want to look at some of the big names around the league that could be available for trade or just on the move in general, and we want to predict where they go. Very simple. Bryce Young, the former number one overall pick, not this past year, but the year before. And what that took was a haul that included DJ Moore and multiple picks as far as draft capital. The Panthers traded up, they got their guy, and it just hasn't panned out. He was benched in week 4, but to start the year, he was 0-3 in the first 3 weeks. He put up 300 passing yards roughly, 0 touchdowns, and 3 picks. So 1 pick a game, about 100 yards a game. That's just not great for a starting quarterback here in the NFL, especially when you draft him number one overall. Now, we know all the problems that this team does have around Bryce Young. It's not just him, but he was a pretty big part in why this team was struggling the way that they were. Amir, your thoughts on Bryce Young and his career? If you're the Panthers, do you trade him? Do you see if there's anything out there, or do you just say, "Hey, we're gonna, put you back into the starting lineup when we feel like you're ready"? I mean, and if that's the case, Amir, do you think his confidence will be there?
I'm gonna be completely honest. You know, for a guy to come in, a situation like this and get completely beat up, around a terrible team, I thought from the jump, they sort of, put his career, at risk. I mean, they literally threw him out there and said, "Hey, listen, we're this high, and you won the Heisman. We want to win games." But it's like, in reality, I mean, they should have either sat him for a year or sat him for at least half the year, and
Right.
then
Right.
go from there. But it's like now it's like, man, it's so tough for a guy that's like, you know, it's so tough to really, change old habits. And, change a guy that's been doing the same thing for about a year straight, a year and a half, and like it would have been perfect for like if he would have sat all last year, coming to this year, this year with Dave Canales, coaching him up, sort of, scratching that surface fresh and saying, all right, look, do this and do that. But it's like now it's like, I mean, in reality, I mean, the Panthers really should go ahead and just tank, draft a guy and probably trade him somewhere at
Yeah.
this rate.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I think some of the potential suitors that I just roughly thought of, I don't have any sources or I didn't really do any research. I just said, hey, these 3 teams kind of need a quarterback for the future. Miami, they're always going to be in these conversations because what is the future and can Tua really hold up years down the line? We saw how terrible Tyler Huntley was and any other quarterback that they've put in there in Miami since Tua went down. So I think, I mean, at the end of the day, hey, trade for him. I'm sure you can get him for like a 5th or a 6th round pick, and he can just be that backup quarterback that can occasionally, play decent, I guess, at a decent level if Tua actually goes down with another injury. Now, for the Seahawks, look, Geno Smith's been solid, but he is on the older side. I think this would be a perfect situation for him because he can go to Seattle, new situation, fresh start, and he can learn behind Geno Smith. Now, I understand they have Sam Howell, but at the end of the day, hey, that's even more competition. And again, competition does bring out the best in people and players, especially. So Bryce Young, again, I think Seattle's a really good spot. Or, of course, the Las Vegas Raiders. Look, Antonio Pierce is a player's coach, and you can go learn from Aiden O'Connell, which I guess Antonio Pierce really, really loves. Or, hey, you can go learn from a journeyman, a guy like Gardner Minshew. He can help them, or he can help Bryce Young. Hey, I've been traded and I've been in new cities almost every single year of my career. this is how I adjusted. This is how I still play at a high level when I do have the chance to do so. I think all three of these spots make a lot of sense. Amir, do any of these spots stand out to you, or is there another spot that I'm forgetting?
The spot I really was thinking about, is the Rams.
Oh,
What if it was,
yes.
go to the Rams, with Sean McVay. We all know Stafford's, the time clock is ticking. I mean, he's in year what, like 15 or 16, something
He's
like
old.
that.
He's like 38. Yeah.
Right. And so for him, I mean, at this point, I mean, Stafford's constantly banged up with injuries. He might have about like 2 good years left, if that. And so what if McVay said, hey, I'm gonna go and trade for Bryce Young, build this project now. And he could really end up kind of like Baker, how Baker went to the Rams, played solid for some games, and you kind of saw flashes of, him being a serviceable quarterback, in that system. So, me personally, I would love to see the Rams.
Yeah, I actually like that more than any other spot here. But again, I digress. Another quarterback that could potentially be on the market is Russell Wilson, a guy that last year was cut and he was the biggest, I guess, cap hit in NFL history, dead cap hit in NFL history. And the Broncos decided, hey, we would rather pay him over $100 million in dead cap than play him or keep him on the roster going forward. That is a statement. And he ended up in Pittsburgh. And again, he was named the day one starter once he signed the contract. But he got hurt right before the season, as fate would have it. And he has yet to play as the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields has been amazing this year, but due to Russell Wilson's calf injury, again, is this a guy that they want to say, hey, we can move you down the line? Or does Pittsburgh say, we just have a very good veteran backup that can step in if Justin Fields gets out of line? Now, I said the Saints, right? Maybe, if you want to get a temporary fix for Derek Carr and then you have a quarterback battle in those times. But again, that's a very quick fix. Or the Raiders. But now that you got rid of Davante Adams, I don't really like the Raiders either. I don't know where Russ goes, Amir. I think he just stays in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think he stays in Pittsburgh, honestly. I think at this rate, especially with that offense, with Arthur Smith and Tomlin, I think it's more so based off the run game. And I think, you know, me and you both honestly said this past game, against the Raiders, was Fields' biggest game yet. And I mean, it appears that Fields is obviously going to be the starter from going on. And so I'm kind of curious to see what happens. I think this week is going to be even bigger against the Jets team that's been struggling. That's what 2-4 now. And so I think that, you know, if Pittsburgh loses this game, their second home loss, I think, they honestly might go ahead and throw Russ in there.
Yeah, no, again, Justin Fields has shown a lot of signs and flashes, but at the end of the day, Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin, they have a good situation on their hands as far as at the end of the day, we're going to have a decent quarterback at the bare minimum on a weekly basis. At the receiver position, we'll talk about DeAndre Hopkins very quickly. On the year, not great. 14 receptions on 20 targets throughout 6 weeks. 20 targets for DeAndre Hopkins in 6 weeks. Doesn't sound right. 175 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, the numbers are not there. Whether if it's Mason Rudolph or Will Levis, they're just not getting one of their best playmakers the football. Now, of course, this is a guy that is older. He wants to compete at this point in his career, and I think a Super Bowl can really take him from a really, really good receiver to a Hall of Fame level receiver. So these are three different scenarios that I like. Kansas City, they've been after him for years. Dallas, they need a wide receiver too outside of CeeDee Lamb. And of course, this offense just needs I guess, a different. They just need an addition, period, right? Because Jalen Tolbert's good, but he's a third wide receiver. Brandon Cooks is good, but can he stay healthy when it matters most? Ferguson, same thing. The offensive line's not great. They need a boost of energy in this offense, and I think Hopkins could be that. And for the Bills, too, I mean, man, Khalil Shakir started off the year hot, but I know this is a running offense. I just think that an alpha wide receiver one, a guy that Josh Allen, that if you trade for him now, you can build chemistry with him throughout the season. And in the playoffs, you can really hit your stride with this offense. Amir, your thoughts on D Hop? Where would you like to see him go?
Me being a big Josh Allen guy, definitely Buffalo. And I keep on stressing this. I think Buffalo's lack of talent is eventually going to catch up to them. And last week, granted, Ray Davis came in and play like prime Barry Sanders. And I'm gonna be honest, like if the run game was not going last night, I don't see that offense moving the ball much. And and I mean honestly, we've seen them lose two straight because I mean the run game, sort of hits like a dead mark. Josh Allen's basically, depending on Khalil Shakir to make plays by himself.
Right.
And so I think that, getting DeAndre Hopkins in Buffalo, and you brought up a great point, building up chemistry before the playoffs is huge. And so I think for this team, bringing him will honestly bring more of a balanced attack for them.
Absolutely. Now, again, I know he's a bit of an ego. You kind of try to get away from that with Stephon Diggs. But again, at the end of the day, talent is talent. And when you have a quarterback as special as Josh Allen, you always have a chance at the Super Bowl. So let's give him the best shot possible and get him a legitimate wide receiver one. Adam Thielen, same case here. Look, on the season, he's only played 3 games. He's been out with an injury the last couple of weeks, but he had pretty good stats, I would say, in a span of 3 weeks. Potential suitors. Look, I said the Buffalo Bills, right, for a lot of the same reasons, gives them another look, like we talked about with Hunter Renfrow, another guy that's out there on the market that could be on one of these teams that need a receiver. I said the Atlanta Falcons because of the connection with Kirk Cousins, and for the Broncos, honestly, I don't know why I said the Denver Broncos, but I threw them on this list because I said, hey, they could use a piece like Adam Thielen to coach up some of these younger wide receivers, like, for example, a guy like Troy Franklin. Amir, maybe it'll come to me about why I put Denver on the list, but your thoughts on where would you like to see Thielen go?
I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point.
Yeah. When I say out of these 3 teams, honestly, probably Atlanta probably.
Yeah,
Team back up with Kirk Cousins, sort of making that offense more high powered. But I think for Atlanta, I mean the biggest problem, with that offense is kind of waiting on Bijan. But I think, bringing Thielen, well, honestly, just kind of bring more versatility for that offense for Kirk Cousins.
absolutely. A better, again, red zone target. He's a very
Yeah.
good red zone target in his entire career, but against the chemistry that we are looking at here. Now we'll come back to Amari Cooper, but for
Man.
Hassan Reddick, we'll make this quick. This is a guy that, as of today, was said that he can search for a trade with a short time period. Now, this is a guy that has yet to play for the New York Jets. He is currently on a contract holdout. He's already lost $8 million as far as his contract. And Amir, this is what I thought was funny. If this is a guy that just wants to give away money, I said, hey, he can play for the Salvation Army. He can play for St. Jude's. These are places that can use the money that he's just throwing away.
Yeah,
So,
literally.
I mean, now again, I don't know exactly if the trade is officially finalized, but I said, hey, why not? He could have been traded to the Raiders for, I mean, hey, if he wants to go there and add to that defensive line, and he could be a part of this deal with Davante Adams. I said, I think that makes sense for both parties. I mean, a defensive line with Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, and Hassan Reddick kind of sounds crazy. And the Raiders have the cap space to pay the man. But Amir, any thoughts about Hassan Reddick? I just at this point he's got to be a grown up and play some football.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like at this point, bro, just play football. I mean, you losing money, like just bringing more drama. Obviously, I mean, teams don't really care much about the drama you're creating, but I mean, I guess the team, I would love to see him play for. I don't think they'll trade for him because that locker room cancer that he obviously is. But Detroit, I mean, they honestly just lost
Oh,
touch.
yes, that's
They
perfect.
honestly get another pass rusher, which I mean, they've been sort of waiting for another pass rusher as is. You bring him to Detroit, and just like that, the defense becomes even more scarier.
That's a great pull, Amir. So shout out to you for that one. We got to the point today on the show. A lot of info here in a span of what 35, 40 minutes. Any last
Yeah.
thoughts, Amir?
Not really, man. Great week of football this past week. We went 13-1, which caught me off guard. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't notice it until you texted me. You were like, "Hey, man, we're like 9-0 at this point," and I'm like, "That's insane."
Yeah, I like to say we're not perfect, but we're pretty good at what we do at this point for free. But hopefully one day for a salary. But go enjoy some football. We'll see you guys next week for some mid-season awards.